and welcome. I'm thrilled to be here today to share with you a side of the weight loss conversation you've likely not heard about before, but we'll be hearing much more about in the next months and years, and especially in the coming 45 minutes we're going to spend together. I'm Judy Bennett, and this webinar is called The Skinny on Chemicals and Weight Gain, How Ingredients in Everyday Products Are Making and Keeping You Fat. So a couple things about the presentation before we get into it. First, look over on the right and you'll see a chat box, and that's for you to type your questions. All the questions will go to my email, and so I'll be able to spend more time answering thoroughly and thoughtfully rather than try and push all the buttons and keep on task and watch the time and answer questions. So I'm much less of a multitasker than that, and so I've decided to have you send all your questions to my email, but I will see them and I will answer them. Another thing is at the very end of the webinar, you'll be directed to a link where you can download and print, if you want to, your action guide. So don't worry about taking super good notes, because all the information is going to be on your action guide that you can keep forever and ever. Such a deal. All right, so the skinny on chemicals and weight gain. So what do those two have to do with each other? Let's find out. Weight loss is something that too many people struggle with, wouldn't you say? Discussion about weight and weight-related issues absolutely saturate the media, newspaper headlines, magazines, broadcast news, everywhere you look, basically. While some people might be sick of talking about this, others are just sick. They're sick of feeling uncomfortable in their bodies. They're sick of trying every diet, every exercise program that comes along, and barely making any progress, or making progress only to end up back where they started. People are sick of remembering when they could still fit into their favorite jeans, and they're sick and tired of constantly struggling with their weight. Now, normally when people talk about weight loss, they talk about getting healthy, and the conversation almost exclusively turns to food, calories, carbs, fat, you know the drill. And they'll turn to fad diets and maybe even cleanses to try and lose a few pounds. And the conversation often also turns to exercise. The right kind, the wrong kind, the quick kind, the easy kind. And these are all valid parts of the conversation and are all pieces of the same puzzle. But there's a piece of the conversation that's being left out, a piece of the puzzle that's been missing until now. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Something that's as connected to our struggles with weight as diet and exercise, but aren't those things at all. Today, I want to share with you how the things around you, the things you bring into your home, may be part of the reason you're either seeing your weight creep up on you or why you're having a hard time getting it to come off, despite doing many of the right things. So what is this missing piece? It is environmental toxins. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. Now, some of you are probably here because weight is something that you've struggled with, and you're certainly not alone. In fact, you're the majority. Nearly 70% of the U.S. adult population qualify as being either obese or overweight. A full 16% of children from ages 2 to 19 qualify as clinically obese. Or you may be here because you've heard a little bit about this idea that chemical toxins in our environment can be linked to weight gain and obesity, but you don't know what this information means for you in your daily life. You might be here because you've tried everything to reach a weight you're comfortable, happy, and confident with, but something's just not budging, and you're wondering if this might be the missing piece for you. Or you might be here because you realize that a holistic approach, meaning not just looking at one thing, but looking at all things that weave and fold together to create an ideal, healthy body, is best, and you're ready to finally start down that path. Well, regardless of why you're here, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to watch the webinar today to learn about a very startling way that the things around us silently impact our health and our waistlines. And thank you for putting yourself first. This is going to be a game changer. So a moment ago, I said the phrase environmental toxins, and how many of you know what that phrase means? What comes to mind when you hear the words environmental toxins? Do you have an idea? Well, if you thought about things like oil spills and air pollution, then you're not wrong, but those aren't the kinds of toxins I'm going to be talking about today. Instead, I'll be talking about ones that are much closer to home and are, in fact, in your homes. Chemical toxins that hitchhike on the products that you buy and use every single day. Products like the food you eat, the packaging that food comes in, your tap water, even your bottled water, your shampoo, your body lotion, your makeup, your laundry detergent, dish soap, air fresheners, on and on and on. So how do these chemicals get into these products in the first place? What on earth are they doing there? Well, before I answer these questions, let's back up for just a minute because I want to explain a few things that will help you to understand the bigger picture and help you to understand why this is such a widespread issue. Right now in the United States, there are around 80 to 84,000 chemicals in use in commerce, and around 1,000 more are being added each year. Some of these chemicals have benefited us. They've given us medicines, building materials, things like that, and there's no argument that many of them have made our lives easier, better, safer, and even longer. However, the vast majority of these chemicals have never been tested for safety by our government or anyone else. And these are chemicals that are being put into the products we're using every single day with very little government oversight or regulation. This bears repeating. These chemicals have never been tested for safety. Environmental toxins in the context of this conversation are not chemicals out there in the bigger environment, but in here in our personal environment. And these chemicals are in us. The CDC routinely tests the bodies of Americans, and they consistently are finding traces of these chemicals in our blood. They're in all of us. And if you live on planet Earth, some amount of these chemicals are in you too. They're so ubiquitous around the world that they're even found in the blood of polar bears living in totally remote parts of the world. So how does this connect to why we're here? How do 80,000 mostly unregulated chemicals relate to a population that's 70% overweight or obese? Well, I'll start by saying this. If cutting calories were all that it took, if it was merely calories in versus calories out, energy intake versus energy expenditure, we wouldn't have as many people struggling with weight as we do. And if you're someone who's tried diets before, someone who's done all the right things, gone on juice fast, cleanses, the Atkins diet, the Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, all those things. If you've done any of those and either had no success or had some success but ended up back where you started or worse, then you know that calories in, calories out doesn't work. In fact, who has or has known someone who's gone on one of these diets and had total success? Now, how many people who've done this have either had no success or they end up worse than they started? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what happened to me too. And let's also not leave out those people who have consistently had to work harder than others. People who are so profoundly frustrated because no matter what they try, they can't get the kind of traction that other people can doing the same exact things. And maybe this is you or someone you know. This is how I sound when I'm on a diet. Why is it so hard for me when my best friend and my cousin went on a diet and they lost 20 pounds in a week and I'm doing everything they're doing and it's not working? Pity party, right? Good thing I don't sound like that all the time. People who experience this often blame themselves. They think they're doing something wrong or that something's wrong with them. I'm here to tell you today, and you can write this down if you want to, it's not true. It's not your fault. And there's a reason why some people struggle more than others. And before you leave here, you will have a better understanding of why that is and why it's not your fault. That reason can be directly linked back to these things we're bringing into our homes and into our lives that are silently but surely invading our bodies. So I want to just take a minute here and tell you my personal story, just so you understand where I'm coming from and why I'm so passionate about sharing this information with you. What attracted me to want to work with clients to help them achieve their health and weight loss goals was the subject of toxins. Our bodies have lots of ways to eliminate toxins, and there are 6 of them, and I'm going to quiz you on those later, so I'm not going to tell you what they are right now. But the truth is, toxins are coming in at a rate that these organs can no longer keep up with. Whoops. It's a little like being in a sinking boat, and we're bailing water as fast as we can, but all we have to bail with is a teaspoon. Now, guess what happens to all the toxins that don't get eliminated? This is gross. Your body treats them as unwanted invaders, which they are. And to prevent you from immediate harm, they get stored in a little pillow of mucus and fat and tucked away in your abdominal cavity. Isn't that just the grossest thing you can imagine? So when you burn a little bit of that fat, the toxins are free to roam through your bloodstream, which can make you feel really sick. You know, those first few days of your diet or your cleanse and you just feel ill? That's why. So it makes total sense to me that if you reduce the amount of toxins coming in, a lot of that belly fat will cease to have a reason to exist at all. And that belly fat, besides being a strong predictor of heart disease, diabetes, and certain types of cancer, is exhausting and disheartening to carry around for very long. So my intention for you today is two things. One, to give you a clear picture of how unsuspecting items in our homes may be interfering with or undermining all of the hard work you put into keeping yourself healthy, or that you're putting in to get yourself healthy. And two, to give you actionable steps that you can take right away to start reducing your exposure to the chemical toxins I'll be talking about. And before we finish, I'm going to share some of the ways that I support my clients around making the kind of changes we'll be talking about. So how did we get here on this beach? How did we get to where sites like this are far more common than they used to be? How did we get to a place in time where nearly 70% of our population qualifies as overweight or obese? How did we get to a place in time where our children are heavier than ever, where a full 16% of children from ages 2 to 19 qualify as clinically obese? Are those 2-year-olds just not exercising enough? If you look back to your parents' generation or your grandparents' generation, rates of overweight just didn't exist the way they do today. Oh yeah, there were people who were overweight, but they were the minority, not the majority. Things have dramatically changed. The landscape of the world we live in has dramatically changed in the last 50 or 60 years. When we consider things from a holistic viewpoint, we can see quite clearly there's never just one thing that causes illness or health struggles to take place. It's never just one thing. You don't just get a cold because you sat next to someone on the airplane who had a cold. You came down with a cold because when you were exposed to that bug, your immune system was down, which could be a result of an imbalance of healthy bacteria in your gut, compounded by a lost night of sleep. There's never just one thing. As a holistic health consultant, it's my job to delve into those underlying causes. This is part of what sets my practice apart from dietitians, nutritionists, and doctors. We're looking at all sides and all pieces of the puzzle. So the truth is, there are always things that happen in concert. It's not just one instrument that makes a song, right? It's an orchestra that together creates music. Things must happen together to create an outcome. Nothing happens in isolation. My work is dedicated to identifying what those root causes are so we can change the outcome. You don't get or catch cancer. Cancer develops. And cancer develops because there are a number of things happening in the body at the same time that are creating an atmosphere for disease or illness to take hold. Make sense? It's the same with this global increase in weight because it's not just one thing. It's not just too many calories. It's not just soda. It's not just less exercise. What we do have is a trifecta, 3 things that converge to create the perfect storm that have all happened in the last 50 or 60 years that have led us to this place. 3 things that have simultaneously brought us here. These 3 things are, 1, we're a nation of sitters. We're working desk jobs instead of field and factory jobs. We're also driving more instead of walking, and we're becoming less physically active overall. 2, we've seen dramatic changes to our food supply. The introduction of heavily processed, cheap foods that are loaded with synthetic preservatives, artificial colors, flavors, and sweeteners, and many other chemicals, some of which we'll be talking about today. We have the introduction of fast food, empty calories, and more food available to us than at any other time in history. And 3, down at the bottom there in the blue circle, the influx of chemicals into the marketplace since the 1950s. Okay, so we're finally ready to talk about chemicals and weight, what those connections are, how we can identify where they're hiding in our homes, and what we can do to avoid exposure. And by the time we finish today, you will want to avoid these after learning what they've been doing to you. Here's a question. Who here has ever been on or has known anyone that's been on a medication that has a side effect of weight gain? We all know this happens. Drug makers know this happens. Avandia, a diabetes drug that's intended to improve insulin sensitivity, has a side effect that causes people to gain weight. This drug has been highly restricted in the US after it was also discovered that it was increasing the risk of heart attacks, but outright banned in the European Union. Antidepressants like Lexapro, Paxil, Prozac, and Zoloft can all cause weight gain, sometimes significant weight gain. A topic that's all over the news. Here are some headlines you might have seen about all this. This is a well-established side effect. Even birth control pills have been known to have tremendous impacts on weight for many women taking them. We all know that medications like this can have these effects. Sometimes it's just one round on these prescriptions that can leave someone with 10, 20, 40 extra pounds, and they can spend the rest of their lives taking that weight off. What's happening here? Does anyone have any thoughts or ideas as to why this might be happening? Well, I'm going to tell you why. These pharmaceuticals are part of a class of chemicals called obesogens. Has anybody heard that word before? Anybody want to take a stab at what it means? Obesogens are chemicals that directly or indirectly affect our weight in ways that can result in obesity through the disruption of metabolic, hormonal, or developmental processes. These are chemicals that interfere with our body's regulatory system, which ultimately determines our metabolism, our weight, how our fat cells develop, appetite and satiety cues, and there are different ways it can do this. I want to start by explaining a little bit of the biology of what's happening inside our bodies so you know what's going on. So let's look at how some of these chemicals that we encounter in our personal environment act as obesogens, chemicals that can make us fat. And I'll be walking through a few of them that you all likely have in your homes right now in a few minutes. So we'll start by taking a look at the endocrine system. Who knows what the endocrine system does? Our endocrine system is a collection of glands that secrete hormones. These hormones act as chemical messengers and regulate everything from metabolism, growth and development, to sex drive, sleep, appetite, and even your mood. The endocrine system is very sensitive, and very subtle changes in hormone levels can affect any of the systems regulated by those hormones. The endocrine system functions in a sort of lock and key mechanism. Your endocrine system is made up of all these locks called hormone receptors. Hormones traveling through your body fit into those locks and act like keys, turning on and off various signals and functions within the body that regulate all those things I just mentioned: hunger, weight, metabolism, to name just a few. Many of the chemicals we encounter out there, including the obesogenic ones, very closely resemble our own natural hormones and actually act as synthetic hormones. These synthetic hormones, again, found in the products that we're using every day, are able to mimic or block estrogen and testosterone in those hormone receptors. This means they'll be moving throughout your body, landing in those hormone receptor locks, and will start to turn on or off the signals in your body that otherwise would never have been turned on or off. They're able to perfectly mimic those natural hormones in the body. So, aside from altering those hormonal signals in your body, obesogenic chemicals, also referred to as endocrine disrupting chemicals, can also alter the way your fat cells develop. And they do this by interfering with our body's master regulator of fat cell development, the sort of motherboard control system that regulates how our fat cells develop. When obesogens interfere with this receptor, the body's response is to tell the fat cells to increase in number and increase in size. Obesogens that work in this way also have the ability to predispose certain stem cells in the body to become fat cells, rather than, say, a bone cell or a liver cell. Activating this master regulator can change a cell that's already a fat cell in the body to become larger, meaning more fat is stored inside the cell. You can see this has nothing to do with diet or exercise. These chemicals that are causing our fat cells to grow. So here on the left is a normal fat cell. It has a little bit of fat in it. And next to it is a fat cell that's been activated by some of these obesogenic chemicals. It's loaded with fat cells that are bigger and more in number. This is exactly how medications like clozapine, sometimes used to treat anxiety, work, and the same way that Avandia, the diabetes medication that resulted in weight gain, worked. Other obesogens have the ability to alter our metabolic rate so that our bodies store more calories than they burn. A number of different types of pesticides act as obesogens in the body by disrupting the weight-controlling hormones, things like thyroid hormone, estrogens, testosterone, insulin, growth hormones, and leptin. Leptin may be new for you, but leptin is a hormone that tells your body you're full and normally suppresses appetite, but obesogens interfere with the release of this hormone in a way that researchers believe leads people to become resistant to it. Becoming resistant to leptin, the hormone that tells you you're full, means you don't feel full. You don't feel full when you should, and then you overeat. Other ways that chemicals make us fat. Let's see. So chemicals also lead to insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone that allows your body to use the sugar you consume. If you become resistant to insulin, your body can't use food and energy the way it's supposed to, and can lead to your body storing fat more easily. It can also increase fatigue and can increase your cravings for more carbs. Here's how this works. So you eat food, then your body responds by producing insulin, whose job it is to transport the sugar in that food to your cells for energy. But because your body has become resistant to insulin, it can't do that, and instead stores that sugar as fat. Because your cells never got the sugar needed to give you energy, you feel both tired and hungry, which causes you to eat more. This obviously is not a position we want to be in, especially if we're trying to lose weight. Remember a minute ago I was talking about all those prescription medications, Avandia and clozapine, and that these are drugs that can trigger weight gain, in some cases very quickly? Now, you know that these drugs are delivered in very small doses, and that these drugs, and in fact almost all pharmaceuticals, are designed to have a physical pharmaceutical effect at very, very low levels. Medications like these are delivered to the body in parts per billion doses, really teeny tiny doses. So what is a teeny tiny dose? What does 1 part per billion mean? Well, to show you how teeny tiny that is, I want you to think of it this way. Let's say your body was a 600,000 gallon Olympic-sized swimming pool. 1 part per billion is equal to about 1 teaspoon diluted in that pool. Some medications are delivered in doses that are bioactive, meaning they have an effect on the body, such as lowering cholesterol, preventing pregnancy, stopping an asthma attack, that are less than 1 part per billion, which is less than 1 teaspoon in an Olympic-sized pool. Your body, in particular your endocrine system, which I just mentioned, is designed to respond to these teeny tiny doses. Your entire hormonal system, that lock and key system I mentioned earlier, is designed to be responsive to infinitesimal levels of hormones in the body. The chemicals we're exposed to on a daily basis through the things we bring into our homes expose us at those same low levels and are able to be biologically active, meaning they can have an impact, like pharmaceuticals, at very low levels. A lot of people think, oh, but it's such a small amount. What does it matter? Well, conventional thinking tells us that for something to be toxic, a bigger amount of it is going to be worse and more dangerous than a smaller amount. And in many cases, this is true, except when it comes to chemicals that interfere with our endocrine or hormonal system, in which case smaller amounts matter just as much. Okay, so let's get into some specifics, because these are things that we're going to look at that we bring into our homes every day. So what kinds of things are we talking about? Does anyone have any ideas as to what kinds of things in your home might contain obesogens? Take a shot. I want to give you 3 examples of really common things that I promise nearly all of you have in your homes right now that could be contributing to your struggle with weight, and how you can avoid them without turning your life upside down. The first one is pesticides. Over 1 billion pounds of pesticides are used on U.S. crops every year, and 9 of the top 10 pesticides used are obesogens. The average consumer is exposed to between 10 and 13 pesticide residues in their food and water every single day, multiple times per day. Meaning, in each glass of water you drink and in each meal that you eat, you can pretty much bet you're consuming between 10 and 13 different types of pesticides, which translates into low-dose chronic exposure of obesogens. Atrazine, one of the most widely used pesticides on the market, is directly linked to abdominal obesity. That's the dreaded belly fat, as I mentioned before, insulin resistance. One animal study showed that chronic low-dose exposure, especially when paired with a high-fat diet, resulted in weight gain. Being that atrazine is commonly found in our public water supply, the water that we drink every day would be considered a chronic low-dose exposure source. And for people who consume a high-fat diet too, you can definitely see how atrazine can be a huge problem. So besides water, how else are pesticides like atrazine coming into your home? Well, they're also hitchhiking on all of the conventional produce, dairy, and meats that you're buying. Conventional produce is loaded with pesticide residues, many of which don't wash off no matter how hard you try. When it comes to meat and dairy, livestock animals are often fed diets that include growth-promoting hormones and antibiotics. Many of these hormones and antibiotics promote growth and weight gain in animals the same way they do in us. When we eat animals that were raised using synthetic hormones, we end up ingesting them too. And what do you think happens to us when we eat growth-promoting hormones? That's right. So what are our options here? What does this news mean that you should stop eating fruits and vegetables for fear of pesticide contamination and maybe opt instead for processed junk from a vending machine? Right, not. Obviously not. Eating fruits and vegetables over not eating them is always a better choice. Ideally, what you want to do is commit to buying organic foods. Organic foods bearing this USDA seal are grown and raised without the use of pesticides, with a few exceptions, and don't carry residues commonly found on conventionally grown foods. The easiest way to identify organic foods is on the sticker. All USDA certified organic foods will have the number 9 at the beginning of the PLU number on the sticker. See it there? I want to stress that organic food is not a fad. It's not a food snob or an elitist thing. It's a straight up taking good care of yourself thing. And it's the way food used to be grown. Industrial scale pesticides didn't start to be used until the 1950s. So technically speaking, organic food is what our parents and grandparents grew up eating, even though they weren't aware of it. To them, it was just food. This is a perfect example of what I was saying earlier when I mentioned how much thinner earlier generations were. And if you're thinking it right now, yes, organic food is more expensive than conventional food, but it's helpful to think of it as an investment in your health because it does make a difference. Studies have shown that children who ate organic foods were able to drop circulating levels of certain pesticides in their bodies to undetectable levels in just 5 days, meaning the payoff is almost immediate. The slightly higher price tag for organic foods can deter some people who are on a budget. So if you need to prioritize, the best way to do so is by using the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list. Every year, the EWG releases an update to their popular Dirty Dozen list, which highlights the top 12 foods with the highest pesticide levels and the top 15 conventional foods with the lowest pesticide load. This way, if you buy only organic versions of the items on the Dirty Dozen list, then you'll be making a huge impact in the number of pesticides you're consuming. I've included a copy of this guide in your packet today, so you can print it out and keep it right in your purse or wallet. Now, let's move on to the second example of obesogens in your kitchen, canned foods. Who here has a can of beans or a can of tomato sauce sitting in their pantry right now? Don't be shy, I'm not judging, I do too. Most people do. And who here has heard of something called BPA? In what context have you heard of it? Chances are you probably heard about it in relation to baby bottles. BPA, short for bisphenol A, is what's called a plasticizer and is responsible, among other things, for making some types of plastics rigid and hard. You may recall that a few years ago there was a big uproar when it was discovered that this plasticizer, BPA, has another quality. It's a hormone-disrupting chemical. In fact, it always has been. It was developed back in the early 1900s as a synthetic form of estrogen. BPA is one of the chemicals whose obesogenic properties are to change the way our fat cells grow and develop, resulting in bigger and more plentiful fat cells, just what we need. BPA, like many other chemicals found in plastics and other places, can very easily be released from the product and leach into the food and water it comes into contact with. This is why it was so upsetting when it was found that BPA was in plastic baby bottles. Babies were being exposed to BPA through all of the milk, water, juice, or whatever that they drank every single day. Aside from BPA in baby bottles, one of the most ubiquitous uses of BPA is as a lining on the inside of cans. Cans of beans, tomatoes, soup cans, soda cans, beer cans, you name it. Cans are lined to prevent the food or liquid inside from touching the aluminum itself, which can also leach into food, affect the taste of the food, and over time can be eaten away by the food. So cans are lined with BPA simply to prevent this from happening. That sounds like a good thing, right? Unfortunately, as you can start to see, the use of BPA is simply a trade-off. Because BPA is one of the most widely produced chemicals in commerce, the Centers for Disease Control has found this hormone-disrupting chemical in the bodies of nearly every single person they tested. As we all move toward eating healthier, one of the transitions we can make is to eat less packaged processed foods and more whole, fresh foods. This should include cutting back on canned foods, but the reality is some canned foods do offer us really great time savers. Cooking beans from scratch just isn't an option for many of us, so I want to make sure to offer you an easy solution here, although I will say this is the exception to the rule. One company, Eden Organics, makes a line of canned beans, all of which are in cans that don't use the same type of lining as the rest of the can industry, and their cans are free of BPA, so you could safely choose that brand. As for other canned foods, you do want to move away from eating as many canned food items as possible. Canned tomatoes are another staple that you really should avoid, sadly, because canned tomatoes have some of the highest levels of BPA in them. So what you can do is opt for tomatoes in glass jars, also from Eden Organics, or companies like BioNature. If you cook a lot or use a lot of canned tomatoes, then this is a switch you definitely want to make. Otherwise, skip the canned food altogether. The third example I want to talk about is something called PFOA. Who here knows what I'm talking about when I say PFOA? Okay, let's try it this way. Who here owns any non-stick items such as pans, baking sheets, muffin tins, or who simply knows what I mean when I say non-stick? Oh, so all or most of you actually are familiar with PFOA then. Non-stick cookware is made with PFOA, or I'm going to try this, perfluorooctanoic acid. PFOA is also found in microwave popcorn bags and ice cream containers. It's used to keep the food from sticking to the sides, so it's in most food contact paper products that are grease-proof. PFOA has also been classified as an obesogen, and, like BPA, is a suspected hormone-disrupting chemical. Specifically, PFOA impacts thyroid hormones, which are essential for regulating our weight and metabolism. PFOA can mess with the growth and development of our fat cells, resulting in more and bigger fat cells. This is also one of those chemicals which, if you're exposed to while pregnant, has the potential to predispose children to a lifetime of battling overweight and obesity. This chemical also messes with our leptin levels, which I talked about before. So what do we do about this one? Well, the best thing to do is avoid cooking with non-stick cookware whenever possible. This can seem a little daunting if your entire cookware set is non-stick, but if it's in any way scratched or flaking, you definitely want to replace it. Thankfully, safer replacements are both readily available and not too expensive. Just opt for cast iron, enameled cast iron, stainless steel, stoneware, and glass. What's great is that really inexpensive cast iron can, over time, if cared for properly, become just as non-stick as non-stick. It's true, like sunny side eggs sliding off the pan kind of non-stick. Any well-stocked kitchen supply store will carry these inexpensive options. And unlike non-stick, these will last you a lifetime and will never need to be replaced. Additionally, and possibly more importantly, stay away from microwave popcorn. Go back to stove popping or air popping your organic popcorn instead. This way you can avoid the dose of PFOA chemicals from the inside of the popcorn bag. Some of these chemicals in our bodies, including PFOA, if we're exposed to them prenatally, can predispose those children to gain weight as children or into adulthood. These are examples of people who were programmed to gain weight. The people who are predisposed from birth to put on more weight than people who aren't predisposed. This is partly what explains why some people just have a harder time losing weight than others. Their bodies are programmed because of chemical exposures in their parents' or even grandparents' lives that predispose their offspring, that's you and your children and grandchildren, to carry more weight. It doesn't mean that they will, it just predisposes them to. So in the face of junk food and not enough exercise and additional compounding environmental chemicals like obesogens, the deck is stacked against that individual. This is likely why so many people in our population struggle from childhood and seem to struggle more than everyone else. This is why it's not your fault. For those people who have been dealt this hand and who have to work even harder to keep their weight in check, for the people who eat one piece of cake and balloon out, it's extra important for them to do everything possible to support their body's natural detoxification processes and to eliminate as many chemical toxins in their lives as possible. And this is what I work with my clients on doing. This is the foundation of my approach to helping clients get well and stay well. As you can see from what we talked about today, looking at health and especially weight loss from only the perspective of food and calories in, calories out is going to leave out this entire area of environmental toxins that contribute to our struggles. I hope that by now you can see how critically important it is to take a holistic approach to looking at your short and long-term health. Before we continue on to talk about specific ways you can support your own body starting today, I'd like to step to the side and share with you something I've been working on to help my private clients reach their health and weight loss goals. I've developed a comprehensive 4-week course I call Wicked Smart, Wicked Hot. It's for people like you who want to find a way to eat that really works with who you are, what you need, and how you live. Here are some of the things that we cover. We learn scientific facts about how the brain and digestive tract work so you won't waste time, money, and hope on the next diet miracle that turns out to be snake oil. We talk about the surprising things in your food, your carpet, and your lipstick that are making you fat, sick, and tired. So we take that obesogenic conversation and go way deeper. We look at the straight skinny on how you've been inadvertently short-circuiting your body's attempts to take good care of itself and how to start helping it. That's what cravings are. Your body's just crying out for something and we're not listening. I teach ways to turn your vices into victories, like coffee, dessert, booze, red meat, soda, things like that. Yes, it's true. You can have all those things and still be wicked smart and wicked hot. We learn strategies for meal planning, shopping, storing, and cooking that are easy to integrate into your life forever. We learn how to vamp and revamp your habits so you're prepared for any situation. It's those impromptu situations that lead you to the drive-thru or to eating out of the snack machine. So I'm going to help you be totally prepared for anything. Here's a good one. We learn how to tell what's food and what isn't. You know what? If an ingredient has more than 6 syllables, it's not food. And lastly, I teach guidelines to help keep you on track beyond your kitchen. Restaurants, potlucks, vacation, fast food. Yeah, there are some fast food options, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. Brown bag lunches, happy hour, holiday get-togethers, and on and on. My class is delivered in 20 audio lessons that you can access on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, or desktop. Each one comes with an interactive workbook. If you're more of a visual learner, I've got you covered there too. You'll also get transcripts of all 20 modules, plus videos, articles, and other bonus material. Also included is lifetime membership in our private Facebook group for inspiration, questions, celebrations, and accountability. And real-time, anytime access to me forever and ever. It's like having a personal health consultant right in your pocket, like the fancy people do. That's got to be worth thousands at least. But because you hung out with me for this long, listening to me rant about chemicals, I'm offering enrollment to you, my webinar guests, for only $199. That's $100 off. So the next class begins on February 22nd, so you only have until midnight on the 21st to take advantage of this incredible deal. All you have to do is go to http, no W's, wickedsmartwellness.com/start and enter the coupon code SKINNY, and you'll automatically get $100 off. Now you can enroll yourself or you can buy the program for someone you love, but I urge you now to get this discount and do it between now and February 21st. Because just imagine all the fun things you won't have to cancel because you don't catch colds anymore. Think about how fantastic you're going to feel in the morning after a solid night's sleep. Think about how loose that top button on your pants is going to be and what you're going to do with all the extra energy you'll have. Imagine how much time and money you'll save by not investing in every miracle bestseller, pill, powder, gadget, promise, whatever that comes along, and how revitalizing it is to stop living on the sidelines of your own life. I teach you how to discover what foods work for you and your lifestyle, and no one else is doing that. I'm so sure you're going to love this class. I'm offering a full money-back guarantee if you're not completely thrilled. Oh, great. Thank you for allowing me that little step to the side. I get all emotional talking about how I want to help everybody. But I wanted to make sure before we finish today that I could invite you to connect with me and keep this conversation going if you so choose. So back to the topic at hand. Now that we know many of the chemicals around us are making their way into us, what do? Well, it turns out that your body's capable of detoxifying many of these chemicals, not all, but many, up to a point. At a certain point in history, our bodies were likely much better at ridding ourselves of these chemicals. But now that we're absolutely inundated with chemical toxins from so many sources, many of which are right inside our homes, it's becoming increasingly difficult for our bodies to process these chemicals. Like Lucy and Ethel here in the candy factory, they just can't keep up. And the result is they're not able to. That's why these chemicals are turning up in our blood and urine in increasing amounts over the years. So the million-dollar question becomes, how do we support our body's ability to detox? Now, detoxing is a word that's thrown around a lot these days. There are tons of celebrity cleanses and detoxes out there, and this isn't exactly what I'm talking about here. I'm also not talking about juice fasts or lemonade diets. Those are all short-term modifications to your diet that usually help you to reset healthy eating habits, but they almost never address the actual chemical toxins in our lives to begin with. What I'm talking about is your body's natural detoxification process. Your body's actually designed to be able to break down and eliminate harmful substances. It has 6 ways to do this, 6 organs that take on this task. Does anyone know what they are? Going once, going twice. Here they are. Your colon, your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, your lymphatic system, and your skin. All of these work together to break down and excrete toxins from the body, but they're only effective in doing this if they're working at top notch. Does anybody want to guess why they might not be working at top notch these days? Yeah, overburdened with toxins, bad food, too much stress, not enough sleep. Yeah, you get the idea. Remember, I said that this flood of chemicals has only hit the market in the past 50 years or so our bodies aren't able to adapt quite that quickly. So the result is our bodies are straining to detoxify as many of these chemicals as it can, but it just can't keep up. So these toxins sit there. I mentioned earlier, they often sit right in our fat tissues where they're stored. And since our bodies are struggling to detoxify them, we need to help them out. And this is the final thing I want to share with you today. Some super simple tips on how you can help your body to usher many of these toxins right out so they're not impacting your health or your waistline. Sound good? Okay. The short answer here is probably not a big surprise. Number 1 on the list is fresh organic food, because remember, we don't want to add more obesogenic chemicals in. And I want to highlight some of the most powerful ones today. And I want you, when we finish this workshop, to go to your local health food store, or really, Fred Meyer has a great organic department, and buy these foods if you're not already eating them and incorporate them into your daily diet. It's possible. First, we want to make sure we're eating plenty of fiber-rich fruits and veggies. These will help move foods through your system out through your colon. This is one of our primary exit ways for toxins, so we need to make sure things are moving along. Second, we want to include lots of cruciferous vegetables, such as broccoli, kale, and cabbage. These foods will help support the breakdown of toxins in the body and will help usher them right out. Third, drinking green tea. Green tea has a number of unique properties that have been shown to usher out some of the toxic chemicals from the body, some of the most toxic chemicals. Drinking green tea regularly can help keep the constant stream of toxins, even the obesogenic ones, from sticking around your body and causing harm. Fourth, our kidneys, one of the primary detox organs, need an adequate supply of water to flush them out. So lots of water too. I consider these to be non-negotiable things we should all be doing every day. What's great is that eating a diet rich in these things can also protect us from heart disease, cancers, and a whole host of other modern diseases. Everybody wins. All these suggestions, as well as a recap of the core points we touched on today, are included in your packet. I hope you've learned something new and are motivated to take a look at the things in your home, in particular in your kitchen, in a whole new light. I also hope that you have a new appreciation for the interconnectedness of all things in your body, and that you understand that the best way to address any health issue is through a holistic approach. Before we finish today, I want to quickly remind you of the special offer I have available, and to jump over to wickedsmartwellness.com/action, again with no W's, to download your action guide. And should any of you have questions, you can get a hold of me through Judy@wickedsmartwellness.com, or my phone number's there too. You can call or text anytime. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to connect with you all further real soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.